Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated and taking over Ichigo's body. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Transmigrated to a Medieval Pokémon World is now on hold, since we've caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if Reincarnated in Bleach as Toshiro Hitsugaya? What if Reborn in Naruto World, continuation? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 151, Yamamoto's Summon. The battle in the living world this time not only shocked Aizen but also greatly surprised the Soul Society. A direct summon order from the First Division arrived. Captain Commander Yamamoto was summoning Ichigo. That's essentially the situation. In the Soul Society, in the 1ST Division's captain's meeting room, Ichigo concluded his report on the Arrancar battle in the living world. Hearing Ichigo's report, Kayarako stroked his chin, sighing deeply. Arrancar, directly comparable to captains. This is truly a troublesome development. Indeed. Hitsugaya nodded, a look of anger appearing on his young face. The Gotei 13 has had 3 captains defect, leaving 10 captains. So Aizen created the Espada to counter us. Does he really think using that Hogyoku to modify some hollows can stand against us? Correct. Kamamura expressed agreement with Hitsugaya's words, be it 10 Espada or 100, I will bring Tozen back. Suifoam also stated, we, the many Shinigami of the Series, are not something a mere 10 Espada can match. Zaraki revealed a fierce grin, the Espada, huh? Seems like there are many things worth cutting. Hope they can satisfy me. Regarding the Espada created by Aizen, the Gotei 13's captain showed varied reactions, yet all expressed strong fighting spirit. Seeing this, Yamamoto tapped his cane, quieting the meeting room. Unlike in the original work, this time, he was controlled by Aizen to have Sasakai'd use his Bankai and slash him, so the current Yamamoto was even more wary of Aizen. Save such grandstanding speeches for when we deploy. Now, let's discuss our response to the Espada and organize the current intelligence. Saying this, Yamamoto looked at Ichigo. Lieutenant Kurosaki, you may temporarily step down to rest. But do not leave just yet. There is something I need to discuss with you later. Understood. Ichigo nodded. Although he didn't know what Yamamoto wanted with him, since he was summoned, he would comply. After greeting the familiar captains, Ichigo stepped back and left. Under the guidance of 1ST Division's third seat, Okikeba Genshiro, he went to a waiting room. However, while navigating the solemn atmosphere of the First Division, just as Ichigo was about to pass a corner, faint footsteps came from another direction. Following the sound of footsteps, both Genshiro and Ichigo were taken aback. Lieutenant Sasakai'd, have you recovered? Ichigo exclaimed in surprise. Because he had injured the respected Yamamoto, Sasakai'd had been deeply distressed. When Ichigo left last time, he heard he hadn't recovered yet, so he was surprised to encounter him here now. Hearing Ichigo's words, Sasakai'd sighed, it's rather shameful. Despite possessing a Bankai meant to exist for Genryosei-sama's sake, I ended up severely injuring Genryosei-sama instead. For such an act, such a failure, I should have committed seppuku to atone. But Genryosei-sama graciously forgave me, saying this failure was not my fault, but because Aizen is too cunning and sinister. If I committed seppuku over a single mistake, wouldn't people outside say Genryosei-sama is inconsiderate of his subordinates, like that cruel Yawatch? Therefore, Genryosei-sama scolded me back to my senses. I am now back to my normal working state. Sasakai'd explained. After finishing, he looked at Ichigo and Genshiro, asking, By the way, what are you two doing here? Genshiro answered rigidly. Lieutenant Kurosaki encountered new enemies in the living world. Captain Commander Yamamoto summoned him to report, and also has matters to discuss with him. So I am currently taking Lieutenant Kurosaki to the waiting room. I see. Sasuke nodded. After thinking for a moment, he looked at Genshiro and said, "In that case, I'll take Lieutenant Kurosaki to the waiting room. Okikiba, you return to the meeting room. I wish to brew Lieutenant Kurosaki a cup of tea, as an apology for the previous battle." "All right." Genshiro turned and left. Sasuke directly took Ichigo to his office, taking out tea utensils and busying himself. However, surprisingly, Sasuke did not perform a dazzling cherry blossom tea ceremony for Ichigo. Instead, he brewed a cup of English black tea with added sugar, milk, lemon slices, cinnamon, and rose petals. "How is it? What do you think?" Watching Ichigo cautiously sip the tea, Sasuke asked with a smile. Drinking this English black tea, or rather this alternative milk tea, Ichigo's eyes lit up. Unexpectedly quite good. Lieutenant Sasuke's skills are excellent. It's just a bit regrettable. Ichigo looked somewhat ruefully at the spirited, meticulous Sasuke, who resembled an English gentleman butler. What he regretted was that his first time drinking the famous black tea wasn't served by a perfect head maid, a noble young lady, or a beautiful witch, but by an old man. So Ichigo felt a bit greedy. However, an elder like Sasuke clearly couldn't understand Ichigo's desire for a young lady. Hearing Ichigo's words, Sasuke's expression brightened. "Is that so? It's good that you like it. The Captain Commander prefers traditional tea and isn't very fond of black tea. All along, I've only been brewing it for my own enjoyment. Hearing your positive evaluation, I feel fulfilled." Sasuke laughed heartily. "By the way, you said it's regrettable. What is regrettable?" Sasuke looked at Ichigo. Nothing." Ichigo felt a bit guilty inwardly. He certainly couldn't tell Sasuke that he disliked this old man and wanted a beautiful girl to brew tea for him instead, right? Looking at Sasuke, Ichigo casually changed the subject. "By the way, Lieutenant Sasuke, do you know why the Captain Commander asked me to stay?" Ichigo didn't expect to get an answer to this question. But unexpectedly, Sasuke only pondered slightly before nodding. "I actually do know a little about this." However, after silently organizing his words, Sasuke asked a seemingly unrelated question. "Lieutenant Kurosaki, let me test you. How much do you know about the concepts of Reisure, Ryatsu, Ryuryoku, and so on?" Hearing Sasuke's question, Ichigo was very puzzled. But he still answered. Reisure is the basic constituent of the soul society. Ryatsu is a person's spiritual pressure, similar to water pressure. Ryuryoku is our power. That's roughly it. Correct, Lieutenant Kurosaki's answer is very standard. Sasuke shook his head, but there's one point you got wrong. Strictly speaking, we don't have a concept called Ryuryoku. The strength of a soul is judged by Ryatsu, and the amount of energy is also judged by Ryatsu. From beginning to end, we directly manipulate Reisure, and then call the gathered Reisure Ryuryoku. Ryuryoku is merely a term for easier understanding. And besides these three terms, there is another vocabulary, Ryo. Ryo? Ichigo showed a confused expression. He was a veteran Bleach fan, having read the manga up to the 1000-year Blood War arc before transmigrating. How come he didn't know about this concept of Ryo? Yes, Ryo. Sasuke nodded, continuing. The so-called Ryo refers to the concentration of Ryatsu contained within a Shinigami's Reisure. It can also be said to be the intensity. Generally, a Shinigami's Ryo is graded into 20 ranks. Lieutenants are usually around the 5th rank. The 3rd rank and above are for captains. Lieutenant Kurosaki's current Ryo level has surpassed the ordinary captain's 3rd rank, having already reached the 2nd rank, and is considered strong even within the 2nd rank. Captain Commander Yamamoto likely asked Lieutenant Kurosaki to stay because of this. Sasuke explained. But after listening to his explanation, Ichigo was utterly bewildered, completely failing to understand Sasuke's meaning. What's going on? Am I a fake transmigrator, or is this a setting introduced by Kubo later? Ichigo wondered inwardly. Meanwhile, the live stream audience felt the same. Ha ha ha. Reisure, Ryuryoku, Ryatsu. I originally understood these, but now this suddenly appearing, Ryo, why don't I get it anymore? Yeah, Ryo represents the concentration of Ryatsu within Reisure. Is he even speaking human language? Why do I recognize every words, but when put together, I completely don't understand? Originally, we understood Ryatsu as water pressure. The stronger a Shinigami's Ryatsu, the stronger their Ryuryoku output. But now Ryatsu is measured by concentration? Intensity, it should be intensity. Didn't this Sasuke also say concentration or intensity? But the fact that the word concentration can appear is really M. Feels like our entire perception has been overturned, right? The bullet comments were abuzz. Chapter 152 New Concept, the Captain Commander's Special Training. However, Sasuke asked this question not to stump Ichigo. He smiled and continued, regarding Ryo, Lieutenant Kurosaki, you don't need to delve too deeply. You just need to know there is such a thing used to judge a Shinigami's true strength, or rather, Ryatsu level. What I actually want to talk about is something else, the Ryatsu suppression theory. Sasuke's expression turns serious. The Ryatsu suppression theory means that a person with high Ryatsu can achieve a certain degree of immunity to the Zanpakuto abilities of those with lower Ryatsu. For the specific effect, you fought Captain Zaraki, so you can understand it as his kind of tough defense. However, Ryatsu suppression isn't invincible. It must exceed the enemies by a significant margin, though it still has some use. And Genryosai-sama has always believed he is invincible. No matter the threat, as long as he acts, he can resolve it. His Ryatsu level, his Ryo, is naturally the highest, first rank. But even Genryosai-sama like this cannot become immune to Aizen's illusion, or rather, cannot weaken its effect. Do you know what this indicates? Sasuke looked intently at Ichigo. Being someone who had watched Bleach, Ichigo slowly snapped out of it and understood the other party's meaning. In the original work, from Aizen's betrayal to his sealing. Very few people truly contributed to the cause of defeating Aizen because they didn't understand him. Or rather, no one had a correct understanding of Aizen's strength. Jin once said in a narration, all of you just shout and swarm at Captain Aizen, thinking that pooling everyone's strength can defeat him. But you don't know that being able to use Kyokusuajetsu isn't even the terrifying thing about Captain Aizen. Although Kyokusuajetsu is also a terrifying ability, if it were just Kyokusuajetsu, many people would still rather die than submit. The Espada have different personalities, unruly and arrogant, yet such Espadas still formed a group. The reason is only one. Captain Aizen's own immense strength. In the fake Karakura Town arc, it could be said only 3 people truly understood Aizen's strength. Namely, Kisuke, Ichigo, and the aforementioned Jin. Naturally, only these 3 could compete with Aizen on the same stage. Yamamoto sacrificed an arm, merely forcing his way onto the stage at great cost, only to be kicked off by the security, Aizen. But now, from Sasuke's words, Ichigo discovered that due to his butterfly effect, Yamamoto had actually started to take Aizen seriously. Why? Because Yamamoto couldn't weaken the effect of Aizen's Kyokusuajetsu. This conversely indicated that Aizen's own strength was on the same level as the Captain Commander. So, what does an ordinary person do when faced with a likely confirmed super strong enemy? Of course, it's to boost their own side's strength. Seeing the dawning comprehension in Ichigo's eyes, Sasuke also smiled. It seems you understand, Lieutenant Kurosaki. That's right. Because your Ryo has reached 2nd rank, and you haven't been affected by Kyokusuajetsu. I speculate the Captain Commander likely wants to discuss the matter of your strength, perhaps a training session. Just like when Genryosai-sama once taught Zanjutsu to Zaraki Kenpachi. At this point, Ichigo completely understood. Sure enough, not long after, Yamamoto, having concluded the meeting, arrived. His first words were, "Lieutenant Kurosaki, from now until the decisive battle, you will stay in the Soul Society. Aizen is an unprecedented powerful enemy for the Series. For the sake of fighting him, we need to make extra preparations," Yamamoto said in a tone that brooked no refusal. "Starting tomorrow, I will conduct training for you, as well as for some promising lieutenants and seated officers." Ha! Even with Sasakai's heads up, Ichigo was still very surprised by Yamamoto's decision. "If I'm in the Soul Society, what about the living world? Your father, Shiba Ishin, doesn't need any further explanation." Before Ichigo could say anything, Yamamoto cut him off. Saying this, Yamamoto was also full of resentment. As the leader of the Gotei 13, managing the captains under him daily was a taxing effort for the captain commander. Yet even so, the unruly captains would still cause trouble for him every now and then. For instance, Aizen's betrayal this time. And further back, Ishin's absence from duty. That guy, Yamamoto not dragging him back to work was already being lenient. So, the father's debt is paid by the son. The combat power Ishin lacked would be compensated for by Ichigo. It's reasonable. As for Ichigo's thoughts? Ichigo's thoughts were unimportant. If Yamamoto were willing to write a book, he could probably publish one on web novel titled, The Long-Suffering Me and My Troublesome Captains, which would guarantee a top spot on the charts. After all, having schemed and struggled with his captains for many years, could he not handle a mere youngster like Ichigo? Alright then. Seeing Yamamoto's resolute demeanor, Ichigo paused, then could only agree. Seeing Ichigo like this, Yamamoto finally revealed a trace of a smile. Good, that's the lieutenant of the Series. Dismissed. I am not some devil. All training starts tomorrow. As for your seated officer residence in the 13th Division, I've already notified people to arrange it for you. You can rest there. Having said this, Yamamoto turned and left. Thoroughly arranged for, Ichigo smacked his lips and could only go along with it. However, stepping out of the 1st Division's main gate, seeing it was still early, Ichigo didn't return to the 13th Division. Instead, he turned and headed in another direction. 12th Division, Technological Development Bureau. Ichigo found Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Oh, Kurosaki Ichigo, what a rare guest. Looking at Ichigo, Mayuri showed surprise. What, finally willing to let me dissect you? Hearing this, Ichigo's face darkened. He retorted. I'll let you dissect me after I die. But before that, give me Ninyu as a maid, how about that? I, Kurosaki Ichigo, keep my word. If you dare give her, I dare sign the agreement. Ichigo said decisively. Hearing Ichigo's words, Akon nearby was shocked. What? That's foolish, mister. Kurosaki. Quickly say you're joking. He knew this scientific madman all too well. Mayuri, focused on biotechnology, would never give up researching a high-grade specimen like Ichigo, so he would definitely agree. The problem was, Ichigo dared to say it, Mayuri dared to agree, but Akon didn't have the guts, nor did he believe the Soul Society would allow such an operation. And Mayuri obviously wouldn't care about the Soul Society's objections. Stubborn as he was, he would inevitably clash with the Series. Surrounded by the fear of losing his freedom, he naturally didn't notice that Mayuri, who would usually agree instantly and add, "There's such a good thing," was actually hesitating. Tisk, Kurosaki Ichigo, others have always said you're a bit clever. It seems now you're more than just a bit clever? Mayuri looked at Ichigo with a sinister, sly gaze. Ha ha ha, you flatter me. Limited by cognition, misjudging others is common. Ichigo laughed without pressure. Just like Captain Kuratsuchi, although ugly and perverted, I know you're not truly extremely perverted. You also have a bottom line. Ichigo looked to the side. Kuratsuchi Ninyu is wearing a modified short-skirt shihakusho. Expressionless, pure yet alluring in aura, with a full chest, two long, straight, snow-white legs that were tantalizing. Ichigo smiled, just like Lieutenant Ninyu. Is this the perfect girlfriend created by a scientific otaku, or the beloved daughter of a mad scientist? Or perhaps both? Ichigo asked. Subsequently, under Nini's shocked gaze, Mayuri blocked Ichigo's line of sight. For the first time, his sinister tone carried a hint of gloom. Kid, where are your eyes looking? Okay, seems she's a daughter, alright, my bad. Ichigo raised both hands, took 2 steps back, indicating he meant no harm. Chapter 153 Quincy's Stealing Erasure Ability. Ichigo's words once again shocked the live stream audience. What? What did Ichigo just say? Lieutenant Ninu was actually created by Kuratsuchi Mayuri? Is that really possible? Previous commenter, did you forget about Urahara Kisuke's mod souls? In that case, Ninu really was personally created by Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Envy, I want such technology too. Then all the wives in my collection could come to life. To be honest, indeed. Want a girlfriend? Make your own. Never inflate prices. Ha, true. Though the person is a bit like a punk, Kuratsuchi Mayuri's craftsmanship and aesthetics are actually quite alright. I acknowledge this master. Scram. Do you want to acknowledge a master? I don't even want to expose you. Regarding Mayuri's craftsmanship, many expressed I have a friend who wants to learn. But for the old father whose hidden feelings were exposed and whose daughter was being ogled, he wasn't so amiable. Mayuri's face soured. For Ichigo, he even lost his desire for research and directly dismissed him. The Technological Development Bureau's contents are top secret, of great importance. If there's nothing else, Lieutenant Kurosaki, please leave. Having said this, Mayuri turned to leave. Wait, I really do have something to discuss with you. Captain Kuratsuchi, what do you think of the Quincy ability to control surrounding erasure? Ichigo called out to Mayuri. Oh? Hearing a topic of interest, Mayuri stopped and looked at Ichigo in surprise. The Quincy ability to control erasure has great potential. But to be honest, I don't think the Quincy have fully utilized it. Why are you asking about this? Because I have Quincy bloodline and have inherited Quincy abilities. Ichigo replied. This was also his purpose for coming to Mayuri. Shinigami, Hollow, Quincy, Zanpakuto, for Shinigami arts, these were all the advancement paths before Ichigo. Among them, Shinigami and Hollow had already reached their limit with the tripartite balance. The 2 Zanpakuto, one was Bankai, the other nearing Bankai. Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Ho-Oh, Kido went without saying, requiring time to polish or instruction from a master. So, after much thought, Ichigo still believed Quincy abilities were easier to improve. And regarding research on Quincy, who could compare to Mayuri at this time? Oh? Quincy. Hearing Ichigo's words, Mayuri's eyes also lit up. Ichigo's hollowification power already made him covetous, and now he actually had Quincy abilities too? The kid next door would be crying with envy if they learned of this. How strong are your Quincy abilities? And what do you want to do? Mayuri asked rapidly. My Quincy ability strength, in terms of combat power, should be around lieutenant level, pure archery. And then, I want to specially develop the Quincy ability to steal surrounding erasure. Ichigo said. The Quincy's ability to steal erasure during the 1,000-year Blood War had truly shocked him when he read the manga. Whether it was stealing Bankai or directly absorbing the enemy. Ichigo didn't aspire to steal Bankai, and as long as it could be used in actual combat, or for recovery during battle, that would be sufficient for him. Thus, Ichigo directly dropped the bombshell. Captain Kuratsuchi, have you ever thought that through the most fundamental ability to steal erasure, a Shinigami's Bankai could also be stolen? Ha! Even Mayuri found Ichigo's words absurd. He looked at Ichigo as if he were a lunatic. Steal Bankai? Are you out of your mind? Ha! Hearing Mayuri's words, Ichigo didn't answer. He just looked around, picked up a test tube from the experiment table in front, and held it. The spatial stretching of Rui activated, the test tube became enormous. Simultaneously, the various erasure compositions forming this test tube appeared before Ichigo. Taking a deep breath, Ichigo used his spirit to capture these erasure particles, then exerted force. Unlike Shinigami, where their Ryuryoku comes from within, i.e., digging into the soul, a Quincy's Ryuryoku comes from the outside, absorbing erasure from the atmosphere. Therefore, stealing erasure is an innate Quincy ability, with the ability pushed to the extreme during the Thousand-Year Blood War. Although not as strong as the Quincy from the Thousand-Year Blood War, for just a test tube, Ichigo had no problem at all. Under Mayuri's astonished gaze, Ichigo easily disassembled the erasure arrangement of the test tube, absorbing it as pure erasure into his body. It can be like this too. Mayuri was shocked. He always thought Quincy abilities could only use atmospheric erasure. He never imagined they could even work on primary formed, materialized erasure. How is this done? Why didn't the original Quincy display such ability? Mayuri hurriedly asked. Hearing this, Ichigo's expression turned odd. Is it possible, just possible, that the original Quincy never really came to the Soul Society? They were all in the Reishithan living world? Ah! Mayuri understood. Indeed, the Quincy never came to the Soul Society. Aho, damn it! Such precious research material, and now not a single one can be found. Captain Commander, why did you have to exterminate all the Quincy? Mayuri wailed in agony. Having an excellent project right before his eyes yet being unable to research it was enough to make him depressed enough to vomit blood. However, Mayuri was still Mayuri. In his confusion, he grasped the key point. Huh? That's not right? You only absorbed it. These erasure belong to you now, so how is it stealing? Stealing is taking it and still being able to use it. Can you currently recreate this test tube? Of course I can. Ichigo nodded, adding, but it needs to be done again, and requires a container. Ichigo summoned his bound doll. The doll-like, cute pixie stood elegantly on the table. Master, why have you summoned me? Yes, I need your help with something. I need you to help me store something. Saying this, Ichigo picked up another test tube. But this time, besides holding the test tube in his right hand, his left hand also held Pixie. Using the ability again, he decomposed the basic erasure structure of the test tube and placed this massive erasure into Pixie's personal storage space. Then, after waiting a few seconds, Ichigo took the test tube's erasure out again, holding it in his hand. Using the control method for forming the spirit bow, Ichigo acted like an architect, laying bricks one by one. Erasure particles returned to their positions one after another. Moments later, a brand new test tube appeared before Mayuri. Seeing Ichigo's maneuver, Mayuri reacted as if seeing a god. Oh my god! It's really recreated! Exclaiming, he snatched the test tube from Ichigo's hand. Mayuri went to a microscopic device, simultaneously fetching another test tube, carefully examining the erasure structures of both. To his amazement, Ichigo didn't just recreate a test tube in appearance, the material constituting the test tube was replicated exactly. Chapter 154 Deceiving Kuratsuchi. You really did it. Holding the two test tubes, Mayuri walked back, his expression completely changed from the previous disdain. This was how a researcher looked when encountering a project they were interested in. Mayuri asked, "How did you do it?" Nothing much. The erasure structure of a test tube is relatively simple. I memorized it by force. Ichigo answered with a smile. Mayuri frowned slightly. Memorizing by force? The composition of a test tube might involve hundreds or thousands of erasure particles. It's impressive that you can remember, but the Bankai stealing you mentioned. Surely Bankai can't be memorized by brainpower alone? Of course not. Ichigo shook his head. So we need something that can remember these things for us. What is it? Mayuri's expression became fervent. The chain of fate. Ichigo replied. At this moment, he was immensely grateful for the analyses by various experts he had read before transmigrating. The Quincy Sternritter's medallion stealing Bankai was essentially the Max Pro Plus application of the Quincy ability to use external erasure. It's so overpowered it seemed like the author is granting a cheat. But if forced to delve deeper, its principle was actually quite simple. Using erasure absorption ability of unknown origin to forcibly steal and manifest a Shinigami's Bankai. Among these, every time a Sternritter's medallion was used, chains would inevitably appear. This involuntarily reminded one of the chain of fate that connected a human's physical body to their soul. Combined with the phenomenon where the chain of fate disappears and a soul transforms from human to hollow. The chain of fate very likely served a stabilizing effect. It stabilized the state of the soul. Thus, there was the force of the erasure absorption ability capable of stealing Bankai, and there was the anchoring point to bundle and secure the thing. The combination of these two allowed the Quincy to steal a Shinigami's Bankai. Of course, the actual Bankai stealing was a bit more advanced. Because the Quincy's Bankai stealing allowed the stolen Bankai to be released by themselves. It wasn't a crude plunder, but a skillful pickpocketing. It's less like stealing and more like, to some degree, replacing or confusing the concept of master. Then the Bankai releases itself, and when returning home, takes the wrong path. Not returning to the Zanpakuto, but to the Sternritter medallion. Of course, these details were irrelevant now. After all, Ichigo didn't really want to research Bankai stealing, he just wanted Mayuri to help him research his abilities. And researching in advance would provide countermeasures when facing such abilities in the future, so Mayuri wasn't at a loss either. The chain of fate. Hearing Ichigo's words, Mayuri also thought rapidly. It must be said, the perfect prospect Ichigo depicted deeply attracted him. A container, the power to steal, the tool to bind. It is indeed possible. Mayuri's eyes lit up. And why did he even need to consider whether the stolen Bankai could be used? If someone used this thing to seal enemies' Bankai, and enemies' Bankai is sealed, can't they defeat their enemy? I'm investing in this project. Mayuri decided decisively. Great! Ichigo's expression brightened with joy. Having successfully tricked a worker, he was very happy. Quickly discussing with Mayuri, the afternoon passed swiftly. After dark, carrying a stack of Quincy materials Mayuri gave him, and having assigned him a large pile of research tasks, Ichigo returned to the 13th Division, to his mansion as a lieutenant. In the Gotei 13, Shinigami of seated officer rank and above could have independent residences. As a lieutenant, Ichigo's designated mansion was quite luxurious. A small villa in the forest, or perhaps a traditional Japanese-style mansion. However, what it actually was didn't matter much, and what mattered was the person inside. Ichigo, welcome back, you've worked hard. Kneeling at the entrance, Rukia, dressed in a homely kimono, welcomed Ichigo's return. Seeing Ichigo enter, Rukia quite dutifully stepped forward to take his Zanpakuto, offered slippers, and also prepared a basin of warm water for washing his face and hands. Feeling the still warm temperature of the wash water, Ichigo was very surprised. Rukia, you've been waiting for quite a while, right? How did you keep the water temperature like this? Hearing this, Rukia, who was still arranging Ichigo's clothes, gave a sweet, naive smile. Did you forget, Ichigo? I'm very skilled in Kido. Rukia raised her small hand. Without even incanting a chant, a small flame rose from her delicate fingertip. Rukia placed her hand into the water. The flame directly heated the water's surface, and the wash water's temperature quickly rose. It's faster than so-called electric kettles, and in just a few seconds, the water in the basin was near boiling. Amidst the faint white steam, Rukia lifted her small face, coquettishly saying, "How about it? Am I amazing?" "Amazing, amazing." Ichigo nodded, looking at Rukia's slightly flushed, lovely face, using willpower to restrain his pounding heartbeat. Whether in this life or the previous, when had he ever enjoyed this kind of full-service Yamato Nadeshiko-style care? Subsequently, following Rukia, Ichigo arrived at the living room. A dazzlingly arranged love-filled dinner appeared before Ichigo. Ichigo wasn't extremely proficient in cooking, but he had cooked before. Therefore, from the plating, knife skills, decoration, and so on, he could also see at a glance Rukia's devotion. A dinner table like this definitely wasn't something that could be made simply and casually. Seeing this scene, the ever-present livestream audience also wailed. Ow, what kind of fairy wife is this? Whoa, I want Sister Rukia as my wife too. Wow, she really is. I'm crying. I finally understand what it means for the gap between people to be bigger than that between humans and dogs. Ah, don't even mention it. My 200-pound queen, even dogs won't eat the food she makes. So happy, so happy. Everyone envied and was jealous of Ichigo's situation. And hearts are made of flesh. If the observing audience reacted like this, Ichigo's reaction was naturally even greater. At this moment, Ichigo felt as if his heart had been struck by Cupid's arrow, intense affection swirling within. Ichigo, let's eat. Completely unaware of Ichigo's state, Rukia called out. But the next moment, a pair of warm, large hands wrapped around Rukia's waist. Instinctively patting the hand on her waist, Rukia pouted, "Stop fooling around, we're eating." But obviously, Ichigo currently had no appetite for food. Rukia, haven't you heard the idiom beauty is a feast for the eyes? What eating? Of course, I'll eat you first. Amidst Rukia's exclamation, she was actually picked up by Ichigo in a princess carry. Simultaneously, Ichigo's livestream screen went black at lightning speed. Amidst bullet comments like, "Do I lack that bit of bandwidth? Who are you censoring all day? What about the promised livestream?" A beautiful nightlife was declared to begin. Chapter 155 Instructor Sister Hannah. Ichigo ultimately didn't get to eat Rukia's love-filled dinner. The next day. Ah! In Rukia's startled cry, Ichigo opened his tired eyes. What? What's wrong? Hugging the panicked Rukia, Ichigo asked, puzzled. It's the Captain Commander's training today. You, me, and many lieutenants have to go. We're going to be late now. Damn! Ichigo instantly became alert. What? We're going to be late? How much time until training? Half an hour. Quick, 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 quick. I don't want to be late. The two became a flurry of chaotic activity. However, just after being busy for a while, Rukia suddenly cried out again. Her two slender, white legs went weak, involuntarily making her lean against the wall for support. What's wrong? Ichigo looked over, puzzled. Before his eyes, Rukia's eyes were filled with deep emotion. Her white teeth lightly bit her red lips, her cheeks carrying a faint blush, appearing particularly shy. What is it? Didn't you say we're going to be late? Seeing this, Ichigo asked again, puzzled. Hearing his words, Rukia was mortified with shame. She grabbed a nearby pillow and threw it over. You bastard, Ichigo. It's all your fault. The Captain Commander is giving special training today. How can I train in this state? Rukia said frantically. After all, a young girl's gait and demeanor couldn't be hidden from others. Moreover, many men would be present, and they're most adept at capturing such moments. Thinking of Yamamoto's scolding, the social death after the news spread, and even further, her brother Byakuya's disappointed look, Rukia wished she could split open on the spot. World, just be destroyed. Quickly restart. I don't want to stay in this garbage life at all. Rukia's eyes were desperate. Put. Seeing Rukia like this, Ichigo couldn't help but laugh. Ah. And you're still laughing. Rukia frantically pounced, biting Ichigo's shoulder with resentful force, drawing blood immediately. But even so, Ichigo still couldn't stop laughing, inhaling sharply but still laughing. The young man is strong, then the young woman leans against the wall, the netizens didn't lie. Seeing Ichigo like this, Rukia's wickedness overcame her fear. Holding the hostage to command the feudal lords. Quickly think of a way for me. TCH. Suddenly inhaling sharply, Ichigo couldn't hold back. Cough, Rukia, I know you're anxious, but don't be yet. Release that chicken, and don't play basketball either. Let's discuss rationally. You didn't tell me you were going with me today either. However, aren't you a keto genius? Use Kaido to heal yourself. Ichigo offered a reasonable suggestion. Oh, right. Rukia understood, hurriedly starting to heal herself. But suddenly, she let out a surprised, lingering sigh. This sound, its lingering notes, deeply intoxicated the listener. Ichigo tilted his head, looking at Rukia, exactly like the "You Seen Sue's" meme. Coincidentally, at this moment, Rukia also bit her lip and looked at him. Her eyes were filled with that eternal truth. Ichigo understood. Right, the wound heals, so. Ichigo firmly refused. No, we can't be late. We have to hurry. Ichigo wanted to say something more. But the next moment, his mouth was blocked. As for Yamamoto's training? Outside the window, a fat, large pigeon flew into the room, cooing. Even knowing the consequences would be terrifying, Ichigo could only risk his life to accompany the beauty. No choice, Rukia was too adorable, he couldn't refuse. Thus, at noon, everyone under the sun was utterly bored. Looking at the scorching sun in the sky, lieutenants like Rinji were very puzzled. The captain commander is one thing, but why haven't Ichigo and Rukia arrived either? Where are they? Everyone was utterly confused. And after another hour? Finally, after leisurely finishing lunch and tidying themselves up, the two arrived belatedly with expressions of facing death with equanimity. However, today, Ichigo and Rukia were lucky. After they arrived, they waited another hour. Today's instructor, Unohana Retsu, finally arrived. Captain Unohana? Seeing Unohana walk in smiling, Rinji was astonished. Rukia also asked curiously. Why is Captain Unohana here? Didn't they say the captain commander was conducting our training? Yeah. Kira Izuru nodded. Matsumoto Ranjiku beside them didn't speak, but judging from the trembling holy light on her chest, she was also very surprised by this. Hearing this, Unohana gave everyone an amused look, finally resting her gaze on Ichigo. Originally it was the captain commander, but the situation changed a bit. Unohana explained. Changed? Everyone was very puzzled. Yes. Unohana nodded, glancing at Ichigo. Yesterday he went to see Mayuri, and today Mayuri went to see Yamamoto. Regarding a certain possibility, all the captains were called to discuss. So Yamamoto, who was supposed to train everyone, currently had no time. The captain commander cannot come for now. Unohana explained. Hearing her, everyone frowned deeply. Hitsugaya Shuhei stepped forward, saying puzzledly. I mean no offense, but with all due respect, Captain Unohana, as the captain of the medical division, can you really train us? Oh, quite bold. Hearing Hisugaya's words, Ichigo looked at him in surprise. He hadn't expected Hitsugaya to be this brave, actually daring to question Unohana's combat power. But this was normal. Since the incident with Saraki many years ago, after Unohana became captain of the 4th Division, she had never taken action again. Not to mention Shinigami like Hitsugaya, many captains weren't clear about Unohana's strength. Simultaneously, the bullet comments thought the same. Yeah, Sister Hana is good at healing, but can she really teach combat? She's a doctor, not a warrior. And even if she has strength, doesn't mean she can teach, right? But I'm actually looking forward to Sister Hana teaching. Pant, thinking about her healing ability, beating someone half to death, healing them, then beating them again, that must be exhilarating. Upstairs, weight class can't describe you anymore. You're a super M. Regarding Unohana's abilities, the general public held an attitude of distrust. Even Rukia thought so. But Rukia had only just opened her mouth when Ichigo stopped her. Captain Unohana. Covered by Ichigo, Rukia looked to the side puzzledly, questioning with her eyes. Ichigo subtly shook his head at her. Others can court death, but you absolutely must not. Understanding Ichigo's stance, Rukia took a step back, no longer speaking, appearing to defer to Ichigo. However, Rukia's submissive appearance before Ichigo angered, or rather, stimulated Rinji. Kurosaki Ichigo, if Rukia wants to say something, let her say it. She's not an object, can't she express her own thoughts? Abarai Rinji loudly exclaimed. Captain Unohana has never taken action before. Everyone has doubts about the captain's strength. What's wrong with that? Looking at the agitated Renji, everyone knew his agitation wasn't about Captain Unohana, but about the relationship between Rukia and Ichigo. Regarding this, they naturally couldn't intervene, so they just watched silently. After all, Renji was their friend, but for Rukia, Ichigo had also sacrificed a lot, cutting down 5 captains in succession and even fighting Aizen in the end. From this perspective, Rukia choosing Ichigo was completely reasonable. But everyone was also very familiar with Renji's baboon-like, wild dog personality. It seemed there would be a conflict now. Beside them, Ikaku whispered to Sister May, looks like today's training won't happen. But watching a show isn't bad either. Perfect chance to see how strong that kid Renji is after learning Bankai. MHM. Sister May nodded, her eyes full of the words eating popcorn and watching the show. In her livestream, the screen was flooded with bullet comments like fight fight fight, let the blood flow like a river. However, contrary to everyone's expectations. Facing Renji's questioning, Ichigo just silently glanced at him, then pulled Rukia back another step, unwilling to engage with Renji. You bastard, what do you mean by that? Renji was very displeased. What, you stole the treasure I've always pursued, and you won't even let me complain a bit or fight me once? The state Ichigo and Rukia arrived in at noon was seen by everyone. The Soul Society wasn't the living world, and there were pleasure districts here. Chapter 156 The Powerful Sister Hana. Facing Renji, Ichigo just said calmly, it doesn't mean anything. I just don't want blood splattering on me. At this moment, Ichigo's eyelids were twitching uncontrollably, both left and right. Because before everyone's eyes, the sweetly smiling Unohana had begun to untie her large braid. You. Looking at Ichigo, Renji wanted to say something more. But a smiling voice cut in, directly interrupting him. Abarai-kun doubts my strength? Can I understand it that way? Captain Unohana, I'm not. Renji wanted to explain, as disrespecting a captain was a major offense. But as soon as he turned his head, the words in his throat could no longer be uttered. Having completely undone her braid, revealing a faint sword scar on her collarbone, Unohana gave Renji a slight smile. Before undoing the braid, she was a gentle, dignified, soft, benevolent, perfect woman. After undoing the braid, every bit of Unohana's previous aura was overturned. It became gloomy, bloody, and dark. Are you Captain Unohana? Renji asked, his voice trembling. Is this Captain Unohana Retsu? It really is Captain Unohana Retsu. But she just undid a braid. Wow, this is changing hairstyle, not changing heads. Seeing Unohana's new image, the bullet comments in Ichigo's livestream were also shocked. In the field, Unohana once again revealed that gentle, smiling, squinting expression. But this time, with her image completely reversed, everyone felt only endless bloodlust and death. At this moment, the elegant and dignified Unohana suddenly flashed a skeletal illusion in everyone's eyes. Seeing Unohana like this, Ikaku exclaimed involuntarily, Captain. It was no exaggeration to say that Unohana in this state could directly take up the title of Kenpachi in the 11th Division, and no one would utter a word of dissent. Such a massive image reversal carved a deep shadow in everyone's hearts. Simultaneously, silently observing everyone without saying much, Unohana simply calmly released Minazuki. A giant, one-eyed manta ray appeared before everyone's eyes, then flew towards the exit of the training hall. Seeing this, Ranjiku was very puzzled. Minazuki is released, but we don't have any injured here needing treatment? Hearing Ranjiku's words, Unohana finally gave an answer, because it will be receiving the injured very soon. Having said that, Unohana took out a bamboo sword for kendo practice. The kind made of bamboo strips wrapped with cord. Seeing this bamboo sword, everyone understood Unohana's intention. Captain Unohana actually plans to fight us using only a bamboo sword. Renji exclaimed in disbelief. Of course. Unohana seriously looked at Renji, then smiled slightly, adding the second half of her sentence, otherwise, you would die. Instantly, a strong chill rose from everyone's skin. As if suddenly dropped from a tropical rainforest to Mount Everest, everyone shivered in unison. Beside them, Ichigo looked at Renji with pity. This poor kid had angered Sister Hana. It seemed he wouldn't be walking out upright today. After taking out the bamboo sword and releasing Minazuki, Unohana didn't say more. Come, one by one. Use your full strength. Oh, and using Bankai is also allowed. Unohana said. Her words shocked everyone again. Bankai allowed? And Captain Unohana only uses a bamboo sword? Rukia looked at Ichigo for an explanation. Can something like that really be done? Ha! Ichigo patted Rukia's mushroom-cut head, suddenly saying, change your hairstyle, Rukia. Mushroom cut, plus a side ponytail. What do you mean? Rukia was very puzzled. Nothing much. Ichigo shrugged. I'm just saying you'd look better like that. But my earlier question? Rukia looked at Ichigo confusedly. Ichigo gave a faint smile. Isn't it obvious? No need to answer, because there's no possibility of it not being done. And in the brief moment of their casual conversation, Renji had already unleashed his Bankai. Bankai, Heihyo Zabimaru. Renji swung Heihyo Zabimaru. The giant snake head bit towards Unohana. Renji's imposing Ryatsu in this massive Bankai contrasted so starkly with the slender, less than 160 cm tall Unohana. But facing the charge of Heihyo Zabimaru, Unohana merely lightly raised her bamboo sword. Thump! Immense forces collided. A powerful wind pressure emanated from the point of contact, blowing everyone's eyes shut. But undoubtedly, facing Heihyo Zabimaru's charge, Unohana blocked it with just a bamboo sword. Calmly closing her eyes to feel for a moment, Unohana nodded. The strength is passable. But for such a clumsy, attack-limited Bankai, if this is all the power it has, it would be quite disappointing. Unohana looked ahead. Abaraikuan, do you have any other methods? Humph. Of course. Having his Bankai strike blocked by a bamboo sword, even if the opponent was a captain, Renji couldn't accept this fact. The giant snake head retreated a few steps. The foremost snake bone opened its mouth. From a uniquely protruding tube-like structure, a crimson Ryatsu blast was fired. The massive body of Heihyo Zabimaru and this crimson spiritual energy blast nearly blocked everyone's line of sight entirely. But one thing was clear to everyone. Facing the incoming spiritual energy blast, Unohana held the sword with both hands, raised it high, assuming an overhead stance. This is... Ikaku and Sister Mei, who often saw Kenpachi use this move, widened their eyes. Beside them, Tetsuzima and Iba had the same expression. Gripping the sword with both hands, Unohana swung down heavily. A bloody sword light easily cleaved through Heihyo Zabimaru's cannon blast. But the bloody sword light also dissipated under Zabimaru's impact. Seeing this, Unohana nodded. A strike like this is more like it, worthy of a Bankai's ultimate move. Then, what about regular attacks? Sheathing the bamboo sword, Unohana began to advance. Using consecutive Shuinpa, her figure flashed, charging straight at Renji. Tisk, damn it! Renji forced himself to snap out of his shock at Unohana's strength. Gripping Heihyo Zabimaru's hilt, he began manipulating the giant snake. The massive snake circled with Renji as the center, occasionally lunging out to attack Unohana. But this time, seemingly determined to end this opening match. Unohana blocked what she could, dodged what she didn't want to block, and before long, she closed in near Renji. Looking at the panicked Renji, Unohana swung her sword. Swish! A massive wound erupted on Renji's right shoulder. Blood flowed profusely. Just one slash, and with a bamboo sword at that, Renji was severely wounded. Thud! His powerless body collapsed not far from Ichigo. Just as Ichigo had said earlier, keeping distance helped prevent blood from splattering on him. Chapter 157 Peak Swordsmanship. Damn it, I'm not giving up. Renji also realized this. He glared fiercely, trying to get up. But the blow Unohana gave him was too heavy. Just as he propped himself up on his limbs, his strength gave out, and he collapsed heavily to the ground. Subsequently, a slender, fair hand without a single callus reached over and grabbed the back of Renji's collar. Looking at this hand, one couldn't tell such a hand could even hold a long sword. Holding Renji, Unohana critiqued. Bankai power is acceptable, but manipulation needs improvement. If we ignore Ryatsu consumption, your Bankai is somewhat balanced in offense and defense. You need to pay attention to the protection the tail snake bones provide you and the control of the front snake head. And, don't be too impatient. Stay calm. Having said this, without waiting for Renji to reply, Unohana threw him heavily towards the entrance. Like throwing a ball for a dog, Minazuki, more obedient than a dog under Unohana, easily caught Renji and swallowed him into its stomach. Gulp! The huge swallowing sound was strikingly clear. Next, who will come? Unohana looked at the many lieutenants and qualified seated officers ahead. Gulp! Swallowing hard, everyone was shocked by Unohana defeating a Bankai with a bamboo sword. After exchanging glances, Ikkaku finally stepped forward, then let me be the second. Bankai. Ryuman Hozukimaru. 3 giant blades appeared in Ikkaku Matarame's hands and on his back. Seeing Ikkaku like this, Unohana revealed an interested smile. Oh. This looks like a very strong Bankai. Subsequently, Ryuman Hozukimaru and Unohana's bamboo sword created sparks. Though it's just a mere bamboo sword, after it was enveloped by Unohana's Ryatsu, it was hard as steel. Clashing with Ryuman Hozukimaru, Unohana was not at a disadvantage at all. Moreover, relying purely on exquisite swordsmanship, using length, avoiding the solid and striking the weak, Ikkaku, who usually laughed heartily during battle to show his fighting spirit, couldn't laugh anymore. Not only that, he felt worse and worse, his chest heavy as if a boulder were pressing on it, wanting to vomit. Ikkaku's Bankai, Ryuman Hozukimaru, continuously stores power as the fight progresses, growing stronger the longer it fights. But now, Ryuman Hozukimaru's dragon pattern charge, after accumulating for a while at the start, began to decay again. Ichigo, what's happening? Did his Bankai fail? Rukia looked at Ichigo. No, it didn't. It just can't accumulate anymore. Ichigo watched the artistry ahead in awe. Yes, in his view, the battle before him was like art. Ikkaku's Ryuman Hozukimaru was a heavy weapon. No matter how Unohana protected her bamboo sword, it would be at a disadvantage. So Unohana avoided direct collisions. She was like a fencer in the sport of fencing. When Ikkaku raised his left-hand blade, her sword precisely cut into the inner circle, striking the force point on Ikkaku's greatsword, preventing him from exerting force. Then, when Ikkaku forcibly held back the returning force, feeling like vomiting blood, and swung his right-hand blade, Unohana took a light, small backstep, skimming past the edge of Ikkaku's blade to evade his strike. Ikkaku's ferocious slash hit nothing but air. This back-and-forth pulling was like a challenger-level Camille kiting a bronze-level set. Ikkaku had brute strength but couldn't exert any of it. Regarding distance and sword control, Unohana had reached the extreme. This was pure swordsmanship skill domination. It was no exaggeration to say that the 11th Division, which advocated blade-to-blade clashes, had probably never seen combat like this. However, not just the 11th Division. Other divisions hadn't seen it either. Ridiculous. Ranjaku murmured in awe. Her words drew a chorus of agreement. Everyone nodded, yeah. And being completely dominated by Unohana with such tactics, Ikkaku reached his limit. A man holding back and unable to release will have issues. After once again forcing Unohana back, Ikkaku gritted his teeth, holding back the metallic taste rising in his throat, and gripped the hilt of the heavy blade on his back with both hands. Ikkaku roared, Captain Unohana, this is my final strike. Having said that, he held the heavy blade with both hands, using chains to rotate the other 2 large blades. A terrifying presence erupted from Ikkaku Matarame. Swinging his weapons, Ryatsu surged. The air was torn by the blades, forming a small tornado. Facing this storm, even the spectators had to erect spiritual energy shields to protect themselves and maintain their vision. Thus, they witnessed another scene. Not giving Ichigo a chance for his final strike at all, as Ichigo swung his weapons, Unohana, with excellent eyesight and judgment, closed in, actually darting directly into the heart of the storm. The next moment, a brilliant red sword light erupted from the storm's center. Subsequently, the heavy Ryuman Hozukimara went out of control, flying high into the sky. In the original storms, Ichigo appeared before everyone, with a massive wound sliced from his left chest to his right waist. From the crimson blood mark, one could faintly see internal organs. Ichigo lay powerless on the ground, blood gushing from his body. Looking at Ichigo, Unohana also gave critique. Sparring isn't a life-or-death battle. You know your Bankai is somewhat fragile. If so, then don't just use brute force. I've seen your Shurikai. Your combat technique should be decent. But this point, I think you understand after experiencing that battle just now. Having said that, just like with Renji, Unohana grabbed Ichigo and threw him towards the waiting Minazuki at the entrance. Gulp! Minazuki swallowed Ichigo. At this moment, with a boom, the heavy Ryuman Hozukimara finally fell to the ground, creating a deep crater in the hall's floor. Simultaneously, this loud noise also snapped everyone out of their shock. Ranjiku discovered something horrifying. She asked with an awkward laugh, "Nei-san, you're not planning to send all of us in there, are you?" To this, Unohana responded with a sweet smile, "Why not? Fighting on the brink of death is what most improves strength." Gulp! Unohana's words made everyone swallow hard in unison. They're really scared this time. Having seen the examples of the first two who used Bankai and were cut down like this with a bamboo sword, no one now doubted Unohana's strength. For a moment, Ranjiku felt somewhat resentful. She murmured quietly, "Damn Hitsugaya, damn Renji. Why did you have to provoke Nei-san?" Hearing Ranjiku's words, Hitsugaya was very embarrassed. Undoubtedly, it was because of his and Renji's consecutive questioning that they triggered Unohana's darkening. "Then I'll be the third." Hitsugaya stepped forward with full awareness of his situation. "My Bankai is still being practiced, so today I only have Shurikai," Hitsugaya said. "Reap, Kazushini." Holding two double-edged, chain-linked sides, Hitsugaya charged. 3 minutes later, pinned by a bamboo sword strike at the Seketsu and unable to retract his weapon, a sword light erupted on Hisugaya's back. He flew from the training hall outward and was swallowed by Minazuki. Then, after tidying her appearance, Sister May also walked forward, ready to face her doom. Chapter 158 Endless Torment. The Ruriiro Kujaku bloomed, and then Sister May was done. Because of her female soul and even more flamboyant dressing, Sister May received Unohana's evaluation of flashy without substance, needs to practice the basics more. And that exquisite grooming was naturally obliterated under Unohana's hands. The fear of image destruction enveloped Ranjiku. Under Ranjiku's pleading gaze, Kara and Omida, displaying gentlemanly conduct, stepped forward. Even faster than the previous ones, these two men didn't last much longer either. Thus, within the massive dojo, fewer and fewer people remained standing. Renji, Hitsugaya, Omida, Ichigo, Sister May, Ranjiku, Kara, and others, all were sent into the belly of Minazuki. Only Ichigo and Rukia remained in the arena. Unohana smiled as she looked over. "Eep!" Letting out a flustered cry, Rukia hid behind Ichigo. Beneath the deliberately loose Shinigami robes, her slender legs were trembling even more violently than when she had just woken up in the morning. The pressure. Sister Hannah's smile.jpg. Sister Hannah, let me see who thinks I lack strength. Sister Hannah, who's the next one to be eaten by Minazuki? Haha, you guys are hilarious, Rukia's scared out of her wits. That's right, I'd be scared too, who could have guessed? Indeed. Terrifying. Watching Rukia tremble and Unohana's overwhelmingly intimidating presence, everyone discussed animatedly. Seeing Rukia like this, Unohana also slightly restrained her ferocity, raising her face with a small smile. Afraid, Rukia? It's alright, you can hide behind him. I believe Ichigo is willing to protect you. Perhaps it was because Unohana's raised face made her appear more sunny, less intimidating. Or perhaps something in her words struck a chord with Rukia. Trembling, Rukia still stepped forward, saying firmly, "Let's go, Captain Unohana. I don't want to be protected by Ichigo forever." Good. Unohana was very pleased with Rukia's determination, and then gave her a slash. Gosh. Staring blankly at the wound running from her chest down to her lower abdomen, Rukia felt terrible. At least the others had exchanged a few blows, why was I defeated with one slash? With such confusion, Rukia fell down. Soon after, Minazuki flew over and swallowed Rukia. Watching Minazuki, which had swallowed everyone, fly away, Ichigo sighed. "Sister Hana, that slash of yours was too harsh. Rukia is thin and small, feels nice to the touch, I quite like her. What if it leaves a scar?" Hearing Ichigo's words, Unohana maintained her usual smile. "Sorry, Ichigo, but I really couldn't hold back anymore. You probably guessed, right? The Captain Commander didn't ask me to replace him. I'm here only for you. I never planned to have others from the start. I don't know how to teach people. I only know how to fight to the death. Using a bamboo sword to eliminate others, restraining myself to the point of not killing anyone yet is already quite good," Unohana explained. Hearing this, Ichigo finally understood. A personal instructor just for me? So, Sister Hana, what will you teach me? Everything. Answering, Unohana drew another katana from her left sleeve. All along, she had witnessed Ichigo's growth. Not only did Yamamoto have expectations for Ichigo, hoping he could play a role in the battle against Aizen, Sister Hana also hoped to nurture Ichigo. This wasn't just to satisfy her battle lust. Unohana also wanted Ichigo to help her accomplish something she had failed to do. Hearing Unohana's answer, Ichigo's gaze turned serious. Within him, the Ryuryoku that had been boiling since the previous consecutive battles surged. Bankai, Tensa Zangetsu. Clad in a black coat, holding Tensa Zangetsu, Ichigo appeared before Unohana. "Oh, going straight to Bankai?" Unohana was quite surprised. "That's right." Ichigo nodded. "Maybe one day, I'll be like the other captains, using Shurikai against enemies most of the time, but definitely not now." A Shinigami's Zanpakuto changes according to their state. Different states are like different weapons. So, for now, I'd better focus on one. A very clever idea. Unohana praised. "Ichigo, I'm growing more and more fond of you. Then, let's begin now." Saying this, the substitute katana, made to the same specifications as Minazuki, slashed towards Ichigo. Screech. Blades collided, creating a continuous shower of sparks. Ichigo, gripping his sword with both hands, blocked Unohana's sudden strike. But the next moment, Ichigo's pupils suddenly contracted. The pressure from Unohana's blade on his hands suddenly eased. Then, retreating half a step, switching her right hand to her left, Unohana twisted her wrist, and the sharp blade sliced across Ichigo's wrist. By the time the patterns of blood venae lit up, Unohana's blade had long since left. With just the first attack, Unohana had demonstrated a feint to him, and succeeded. "Now truly beginning the instruction," Unohana said. "Fighting relying on your innate talent, perhaps you've always faced straightforward opponents, and with that defensive move, you aren't afraid of such attacks, so you were unprepared. But from now on, remember this. Combat employs every possible means and is mixed with all sorts of cunning. You need to judge your opponent's sword. Consider this small wound a lesson." Again. Unohana used Shunpa rapidly, slashing at Ichigo. Responding with equal speed, Ichigo tried to circle behind Unohana. But as if reading his mind, Unohana, a step faster, had already placed her blade in front of Ichigo. Swish! Adjusting his posture with difficulty, Ichigo was still struck by this slash. Absolute speed is invincible, but only if you truly possess absolute speed. Your power and speed after Bankai are good, but don't be so linear. It's too easy to read. Unohana said. Then, Ichigo unleashed his trump card, Hitsugaya Tensho, only to have it interrupted midway. Unohana continued lecturing. Leave more room for yourself. Don't pour all your power into a single move. Between striking a more powerful blow and striking a more threatening blow, which should you choose? Using high speed to circle around Unohana, Ichigo made his blade dance into afterimages, and his body run into blurs. Thousands of blades stabbed towards Unohana. But then, Unohana's expression turned serious, and she thrust fiercely towards one particular afterimage. Gosh! Another bloody gash appeared on Ichigo's body. The move is good, but your high-speed afterimages shouldn't just be about power. You need to find your opponent's weaknesses more, then feint and pull, forcing them to expose bigger openings. Unohana's critique sounded again. Just like with Ikaku, with absolute sword skill, Unohana crushed Ichigo technically. In just 2 or 3 exchanges, the wounds on Ichigo's body were comparable to those from the Sokayaku Hill period. Just as Ichigo was about to head to Minazuki on his own. Wait! Unohana stopped him. Let me do it. Instead of sending Ichigo to squeeze into Minazuki with the others, Unohana began healing him. Smiling at Ichigo, a battle lust that could no longer be suppressed shone in Unohana's eyes. You didn't think this little bit was enough, did you? Pointing out flaws is useless if only said. They won't be remembered unless engraved into your body with experience. I've played the good teacher for long enough, Ichigo. For some reason, Ichigo suddenly had a bad premonition. Would Sister Hana subject me to the kind of combat training she had done with Saraki Kenpachi and Muken? In short, targeting him, healing him, and then continuing the fight. Ichigo looked at Unohana. By now, having healed Ichigo, Unohana had already picked up her sword again, gesturing for him to attack. Hitsugaya Tensho. The intense clashing of swords rang out. The hellish battle began anew. Herein, endless torment. Chapter 159 changed the battlefield. 1 month later. For TH Division's training grounds. Hitsugaya Tensho. Licked Regan. A black crescent moon shot out in a ring, supplemented by countless arrows falling like rain. Before them were countless winding and twisted, vine-like crimson blades, and a deep pool of blood. In various forms, these blades slashed at Ichigo from all directions. The Hitsugaya Tensho and Licked Regan had just erupted, destroying a large swath of the vine-like blood blades. Immediately, even more blood blades replenished them. As if each blood blade had its own controller, employing all sorts of sword techniques, treacherous, despicable, honorable, or winning with unexpected moves, these variously shaped blood blades also executed a variety of skills. At this moment, Ichigo resembled Master Yi having to fight 10 opponents at once. T/N, referring to Ip Man movie. Holding a single Tensa Zangetsu, Ichigo continuously parried the surrounding blades. Using the extreme speed of his Bankai, facing many simultaneously arriving blades, Ichigo spun himself into a top. However, what he faced were not fists, nor were they the small fry and extras Master Yi confronted in the movie. Ultimately, one against many scenarios in movies are specifically choreographed and arranged fight scenes. Such scenarios are extremely difficult, if not impossible, to appear in reality. As master in Zanjutsu, Unohana could make each blood blade equal to a master swordsman. Within the massive blood blade sword formation, under the siege of countless master swordsmen, Ichigo lasted only 3 minutes before his body spurted blood from 100 slashes, collapsing exhausted. This was Unohana's Bankai, Minazuki. T/N, the Minazuki here is written with different kanji from the Shurikai's Minazuki. Upon Bankai, Unohana's blade and the surrounding environment would spread a wide range of blood. The blade transformed into extendable and bendable blood blades. Unlike the healing of her Shurikai, Unohana's Bankai was the reverse of her Shurikai. If Minazuki's ability in Shurikai is to heal life, then Minazuki in Bankai is to take life, to drain blood. The drained blood could then be transformed into blood blades. This is somewhat similar to Heiden's death-controlling possessed blood. But Minazuki is stronger than death-controlling possessed blood, and it only needs to cut the enemy to drain their blood, then use the blood to create blood blades. Because Unohana is a master in Zanjutsu, she can precisely control each blade to deliver exquisite slashes. This is a Bankai perfect for both single combat and group battles. It can be said, this is a perfect person, controlling a perfect Bankai. Of course, this was just training, so Unohana didn't activate the blood-draining ability. Dispelling her Bankai, Unohana stepped forward, looking down at Ichigo lying on the ground with a teasing smile. Not bad, Ichigo. Your progress is significant, going from collapsing in 3 seconds to lasting 3 minutes so quickly. Very good, very good. Hearing Unohana's words, Ichigo rolled his eyes helplessly. 3 seconds to 3 minutes. Sister Hana, for a moment I don't know if you're praising me or mocking me. Of course, I'm praising you. Smiling brightly, Unohana walked up to Ichigo. Not minding the blood all over the ground, she knelt down, placed Ichigo's head on her lap, and began healing. Feeling the familiar, tingling sensation of recovery all over his body, and the fragrance of a beauty that even the smell of blood couldn't mask, Ichigo took a deep breath and relaxed. The fatigue of battle gradually eased. Looking up at the massive presence blocking his view of Unohana's face, Ichigo sighed with emotion. If Renji and the others knew that after being slashed, instead of being swallowed by Minazuki, they'd get Sister Hana's lap pillow treatment, I wonder if they'd grit their teeth and persist. If it were me, I'd definitely persist. After all, if I could enjoy Sister Hana's gentleness, then mere sword wounds. Ouch! Unohana, with a sly smile, inserted her finger into one of Ichigo's wounds. Ouch ouch ouch, I was wrong. Ichigo begged for mercy. Humph. From an angle he couldn't see, she gently withdrew the finger she had inserted into Ichigo's wound. A faint smile curled at the corner of Unohana's mouth as she playfully scolded. See if you'll keep being glib. Clearly a young lad, but acts like an old slickster. I don't know how Rukia puts up with you. Hearing this, Ichigo said cheekily. True, Rukia can't put up with me, so she faints every time. I don't know if Sister Hana has any medicine here that could help her. Hee hee. Listening to Ichigo, Unohana was successfully amused. Medicine? So you're saying your body is very good, huh? Alright, just average, I guess. Capable of nightly sessions, able to pull all-nighters, that level. Ichigo boasted shamelessly. Of course, nightly sessions was an exaggeration, so Ichigo was actually referring to Rukia. 10 outbursts in one night, even Sori no Shirayuki would melt. If her future Bankai, Haka no Togame, were placed here, it could probably thaw without danger. But who was Unohana? A big sister over 1,000 years old. Ichigo's 2 lifetimes combined didn't even amount to a fraction of Unohana's years. Could Ichigo really tease her? Moving Ichigo's head a bit outward so he could see her, Unohana looked down at Ichigo, her expression changing to dangerous and bloodthirsty. Then get up for another round? Let's see how much blood you have left to shed, if you can shed enough for 10 nightly sessions. I'll calculate it as 1,000 milliliters per session. How about it, want to try? Saying this, Unohana gripped Minazuki at her waist again. No, forget it. Ichigo's face paled. An adult male's total blood volume is about 4,500 to 5,000 milliliters. 1,000 milliliters of blood would cause him to faint on the spot. Even though his blood production ability became strong after becoming a Shinigami, he couldn't withstand that kind of drain. But Ichigo still refused to admit defeat verbally. Sister Hana, I don't think we need to use the conversion of 1 essence equals 10 blood to prove it by bleeding. Change the battlefield, and I can definitely prove myself. Hee hee. Still thinking about changing battlefields? You can talk after you can defeat me. Unohana chuckled lightly, poking Ichigo's forehead, not taking his words seriously. Because Unohana's training was excessively brutal, the other lieutenants and seated officers, even those from the combat-focused 11th Division, gave up after just over 10 days. So, recently, only Ichigo had been persevering with Unohana's swordsmanship education. Of course, he wasn't like Zaraki who fed on battle. Unohana's blades truly cut into your body. Being slashed into critical condition daily, then recovering, then critical again, recovering again, fighting to the death until utterly exhausted. Not many people could persist with such a routine without a bit of masochism or mental aberration. Even Zaraki, who fed on battle in Muken, saw Unohana as a terrifying skeleton hallucination, didn't he? Therefore, distraction was very important. Unrestrained conversation, Unohana's solo benefit distributions, and occasional physical contact were also indispensable parts after becoming familiar. And having been giving Ichigo personal treatment for so long, Unohana was very familiar with his body. Simultaneously, the sword wounds she inflicted were specifically planned from the moment of the slash. This is a medical student for you, slashing you 48 times, each slash non-lethal. Chapter 160 Ichigo, for that, I'm invincible. Therefore, very quickly, Ichigo's injuries completely healed. Alright, get up. Patting Ichigo's head, Unohana announced the treatment was complete. Having absorbed enough big sister energy, Ichigo stood up again, holding Tensa Zangetsu with both hands, saying seriously, Hanane, if I defeat you, can we really change the battlefield? Hearing Ichigo's words, Unohana was also quite surprised. Oh, you really dare to think like that, young man? To endure such a sword-infested hell for that kind of thing? Unohana was very puzzled. She scrutinized the look in Ichigo's eyes. And it was no exaggeration to say, if Ichigo were placed in a shonen manga right now, it would be the final battle, complete with a power-up special effect. Instantly, Unohana was moved, her heart stirred. Your resolve is actually this strong. However, Unohana was also amused and didn't know how to describe someone like Ichigo. Of course. For that, I am invincible. Ichigo shamelessly replied. When blades clash, a person's heart is most clearly reflected. A person's fighting spirit can be clearly understood from their sword. So after fighting for so long, Ichigo couldn't pretend to be the original Ichigo, nor did he try. Ichigo's sword, from beginning to end, had only one intention. To attack, pierce the opponent's flesh, taste her blood. Seeing Ichigo like this, not only was Unohana moved, but the bullet comments also couldn't hold back. Ha ha ha, that's me. My other self appears in reality. That's me too. When looking for resources, my mind is clear, my thoughts sharp. And me. When I get a compressed file with a password, even Conan isn't as good at decrypting as I am. Still me. I, who completely don't understand computers, can still figure out the barriers between 7Z and zip on my phone, successfully converting them. You all, that's nothing. Let me tell you, it's me. Last time, a shortening link expired, instantly turning me into an anxious king. So every time I download software, I bring a bunch of bundled crap. I actually learned from a tutorial and installed a shortening second link plugin, directly skipping those shortening links. Previous commenter, send the second link tutorial. Because of Ichigo's invincible for that declaration, it instantly resonated with many. Not just Dongwa people often in Ichigo's livestream, but also many Shigwa people began typing in various languages, sharing all kinds of alternative resource websites. For a moment, the bullet comments became a forum moderator's paradise, without even needing gold coins. That carnival began. Simultaneously, perhaps sensing the fervor outside. In the screen, Unohana also added fuel to the fire. A big sister over 1,000 years old didn't view some things as seriously as little sisters like Rukia. Understanding Ichigo's intentions, Unohana didn't really refuse. After all, age-wise, she wasn't at a loss, but actually gained a lot. Unohana said, I thought you were just a little puppy with a wolf's mouth. Turns out you are a wolf. If you want it, fine. But defeating me isn't the limit. After you have the strength to defeat me, you must help me accomplish one thing. Remembering that failure hundreds of years ago, Unohana sighed. It was no exaggeration to say that failure nearly reversed her entire life. Directly turning a battle-loving, first-generation Kenpachi of the 11th Division into the gentle, kind, healing captain of the 4th Division. So, it's about Zaraki. Seeing Unohana like this, Ichigo also had some understanding. Though still somewhat distant, Ichigo was confident he could help Zaraki complete his awakening. "Alright, it's a deal," Ichigo said. Simultaneously, he didn't forget to tease Unohana. "Rukia is still a bit too weak, always fainting. Hanane, you should definitely be able to withstand my blade, right? But by then, my strength might be something even you, Hanane, can't withstand." Thinking of Unohana fainting and collapsing during a battle. The Ryatsu Ichigo had dug out from the deepest parts of his body through continuous near-death injuries erupted. The battle-intense Ichigo stared intently at Unohana, his fiery gaze seemingly able to ignite the air. Ichigo took a deep breath. "Let's continue." "Good." Seeing Ichigo like this, Unohana felt a warmth in her chest, a flame also rising within. Picking up Minazuki, she prepared to release Bankai again, turning this space into a sword-infested hell. But immediately, she noticed Ichigo's fiery gaze. The angle of this gaze was a bit strange. Following Ichigo's line of sight, Unohana slightly lowered her head to find the difference. As usual, she couldn't see her toes. And to motivate Ichigo, she hadn't bound them, so her clothes were a bit messy, and because of Ichigo's attacks, also a bit torn. The secret usually hidden by the large braid in clothes wasn't completely concealed. "You little rascal." Unohana gave a helpless smile. The momentum she just built was interrupted by Ichigo's actions. She didn't specifically tidy up, but Unohana also didn't want to continue. Therefore, beckoning Ichigo to come over, Unohana proposed something new. "Ichigo, your Zanpakuto's ability is Getsuga Tensho, right?" Yes." Ichigo nodded, not understanding why Unohana brought this up. "Come here and watch my movements carefully." Unohana pulled Ichigo to her side. Coming to Unohana's side, Ichigo instantly understood the meaning of viewed from the side. It's a ridge. Viewed from the end, it's a peak. But that wasn't the point. Holding Minazuki with both hands, Unohana assumed an overhead stance. Subsequently, just like Zaraki's Zenjutsu, Unohana heavily swung the sword forward. Powerful Ryatsu surged. From Unohana's blade, a bloody slash tore through the void. For some reason, Ichigo felt this was very familiar. But Unohana didn't explain for now. After demonstrating the slash, Unohana said to Ichigo, "From Shurkai to Bankai to Holification, give me 3 Getsuga Tenshos of your maximum power at each stage." "Huh? Why?" Ichigo was very puzzled. "Just do it." Unohana shook her head, not elaborating. "Oh, alright." Confused, Ichigo obeyed. "Getsuga Tensho. Getsuga Tensho. Getsuga Tensho." 3 stages, 3 different Getsuga Tenshos unleashed. The Shurkai stage Getsuga Tensho, Unohana blocked with her body, and the Getsuga Tensho was deflected by the frontal armor. The Bankai stage Getsuga Tensho, Unohana drew Minazuki, blocking with a slash. Only for the Bankai plus Holification Getsuga Tensho did Unohana finally use the Zanjutsu Ichigo had seen earlier. The pitch-black crescent charged at Unohana with an aura of destroying everything. But the next second, it was engulfed by an equally bloody, dominating slash. As if replaying Unohana's earlier battle with Renji, Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho was also negated by Unohana. "What did you see?" Unohana asked. Forgetting to admire the even more attractive scenery after the Shurkai Getsuga Tensho, Ichigo was completely absorbed in Unohana's final slash. He thought and answered, "Your slash just now is very similar to my Getsuga Tensho?" "Correct." Unohana nodded. "To be precise, I intentionally imitated your Getsuga Tensho." That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated and taking over Ichigo's body. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Transmigrated to a Medieval Pokémon World is now on hold, since we've caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if Reincarnated in Bleach as Toshiro Hitsugaya? What if Reborn in Naruto World, continuation? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.